Hey, everybody. Welcome to a very special episode of Bookish, brought to you by, as always, the Southern California News Group and the Bay Area News Group. I'm excited about tonight's performance, but first I need to thank you for your Reader Rewards subscribers for supporting our programs. And know that if you're a Reader Rewards member attending tonight, you're automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate to our partner and one of our favorite independent bookstores in LA, Once Upon a Time. And hey, if you don't subscribe to one of our newspapers in your local area, well, why not? Go to scng.com/subscribe to find your local paper and, come on, join the family. Oh, and one final thing before we get started, because we've got so much to cover tonight, we don't have time for our usual live shout outs, but, please keep the conversation going in the chat. Now, let me bring on our beloved host, the performer, writer, artistic virtuoso, and my dear friend, Sandra.
Hello. Oh my gosh, Samantha. Congratulations on 2 years of Bookish, our live monthly Zoom hour of writer conversations.
Yes, and just to recap, everybody, Bookish actually began as Lit Up in the summer of 2020. It was at the start of the pandemic, and it began as SCNG's response to really a negative. Book festivals were canceled, tours were canceled, readings were canceled, but it was one of those weird pandemic silver linings. We found that Zoom has given a new and really extraordinary access for our readers.
I'm seeing a frozen screen. Things were canceled.
Oh, hello? Hello?
Hello. And many things like what happened just happened because it was like live Zoom. So I think it's completely magical that your screen just froze. This is perfect.
The perfect example of live Zoom. Anyway, yeah. Okay, here we go.
Okay, even though all this happened, it made us very close with the viewers at home in their living rooms who are laughing now because the screen froze, probably typing and screaming. But it also gave us like really amazing access to authors. The readers were coming from California all the way from Norway, where at 5 p.m. it's 2 a.m. The authors were literally in their living rooms. I was so delighted that I got to see Frances May's of Under the Tuscan Sun, her living room, which you all are gonna see. And I got to ask her what she was having for dinner. Her husband was making beef curry.
Yes, right. This format created an amazing intimacy and maybe some technical difficulties that you rarely see in conventional book presentations. I'm really thinking about those blockbuster multi-million selling writers like Michael Connelly, David Baldacci, Scott Turow, Dean Koontz, who
we have right now.
Yes, who, you can't even get close to them in traditional book events. You wait in line for hours and then they look like an ant up there, But, with Bookish, you're practically in their laps.
Under Scott Turow's nose, which is a fantastic place to leap. I love his clip. I mean, that said, 30 shows, almost 100 writers. There were many of our favorites we didn't have time to include. So for today, this is an hour. It's a tasting menu of 22 writers grouped around 6 themes to pique your curiosity.
Yes, about their books, about the fuller conversations with them, which are completely archived under our past events tab. If you go to scng.com/virtual events, you're going to see there the best of the Southern California literary scene and beyond, I think.
Speaking of which, our first theme is sense of place.
And our first 5 authors are crime novelists, as we mentioned, Michael Connelly, suspense writer David Baldacci, satirist Carl Hyacin, memoirist Wajahat Ali, and John Cho. My son, and maybe you people out there too, your sons, would know him as Harold of Harold and Kumar movies, but really he's a wonderful YA author.
And their places are, starting with Michael Connelly, Los Angeles, bars, although David Baldacci does not look like a barfly, you'll see. He does not like you. I don't see the red bloodshot eyes. We're going to Palm Beach, Florida, the other Californias, we like to say, Silicon Valley, land of tech. You'll see why tech is important. And the good old San Fernando Valley. Let's roll tape.
Someone once said that if you tilted the country, all the loose marbles come to LA. It's just a lot of interesting things here, and you do have this sense, and maybe it's a false sense, but I got it when I came here as a newspaper reporter, and I worked the night beat covering cops and crime. And this was before the internet. And I would drive home at night on the Hollywood freeway where it's kind of elevated. You see across, you see the Capitol Records building and you see Hollywood. And I always felt like a prince of the city, like I was in front of something that, and I feel that way about the city, that if something's going to happen in our culture or in our society, there's a good chance it's going to start in Los Angeles, and Los Angeles will be riding on the front of that wave. And that's really intoxicating to writers and creative people. And that's why I think it draws people. I never stepped foot in LA till I was 30 years old, but I had been trying to write novels. And then when I got here, it started to click and it started to work. So there's, they say the light's different out here. I think it's more than the light. I think there's some kind of creative energy out here that's different as well.
Why do you think that? Do you think it's because we're not an East Coast city that's stuck in our ways, but because this is the Wild Wild West? Or
It does, and I was about to say that before you said that. It is the Wild Wild West. I mean, it does have, and this is also in the level of crime. There's the sense that anything can happen. And, it's just like the story about Lana Turner being discovered in a drugstore or something. Anything can happen, and it can be good or bad. And when you, turn that focus onto crime fiction or crime reporting, especially my experience as a reporter in this town, you see that all the time. And then you carry that in some of the stories I just told, the luck of how some things have dropped into my lap that have been, very fortuitous. Somehow it's hard to say that's not because I'm in LA. I just wonder if that way, if I stayed in South Florida, which is also a cultural flashpoint in our society, if I had stayed there, would the same things have happened to me? And I just don't feel they would have. I think I had to come here just as many other people feel that they had to come here.
I've been to lots of different bars. I don't really remember the names that much, but I do remember, that bars are a great place as a writer just to sit and soak it all up. I mean, I have come up, I've taken, elements of people I've seen in lots of bars and grafted them onto characters because I found them so interesting. The way they held a glass, the way they talked, the way they smoked a cigarette, the way they just looked blankly at the mirror and all the bottles in front of it. So I've done a lot of that over my life. I think when people are a little bit, drunk, you see the real side of them and how they actually interact with other people. And that's pretty fascinating to me. And look, being a writer is being an observer. People say, where do you get your ideas from? And my answer is simple. I wake up every day and I walk out the door and I don't stare at my phone. I'm watching what's happening around me. And those are where the ideas come from.
It was hard. The hardest part was, of course, when you're writing satire, is sort of staying ahead of the curve of reality in Florida. I mean, it's very, very difficult. Every day I was writing, I was picking up the headlines, praying that something more bizarre and twisted wasn't going to happen in real life than what I had just written. And I think this is a challenge for anyone who writes humor or satire in the times we live in now. And I certainly sort of felt the heat.
But to go back to the names of these ladies who I am totally obsessed with, that it is, although it's it's comedy and it's satire, there's such a precision that all of the women have like 3 names.
Of course, that's mandatory in Palm Beach society. You have to have 3 names.
Can you explain to our viewers why all these ladies, the Patricies, have 3 names?
Well, they almost universally come from old money. And so as they came out in the era when they were, and I guess they still have debutante balls, but they're going back a generation or so. So when they came out, they couldn't just be, Liz Montgomery. You had to be, and the middle name is often the name of another family. It's often named after another source of money in the family, because they'd have to pay tribute to all the various trust funds that are coming their way. So the names become significant. Like there's a character who, and we won't give too much away, who disappears at a big society function early on, and her name is Kiki Pugh Fitzsimmons, and there was a Pugh family, and then there was Fitzsimmons, which I believe was her 2nd or 3rd husband, who was also, so she, when her final husband died, she had multiple sources of wealth. So this was her tribute to the various, the various things that enabled their lifestyle. And it's a fairly insulated society. So when you have someone come in with money, you would think that, but you know what, it's Florida, and what we've discovered is anybody can buy their way in, anybody.
Yeah, but you said like never check, because tech is like you had to work for it.
Yeah, no, something, no, there can't be much employment in the family tree. That limits you. You have to, you know, as Molly Ivins used to say about a former president, you have to be born on third base and thought you hit a triple.
So you paint a picture to our viewers about little Wajahat growing up in Fremont.
Yes, this idyllic portrait of the Bay Area, California, with beautiful weather, with a slight breeze, right? Situated in between San Jose and Oakland, this sleepy suburban town where there used to be a lot of white people in the 80s until brown folks and Asian folks came and, you know, pulled themselves up from the bootstrap and achieved the American dream. And in this idyllic version of the Bay Area, of this American dream, there was Wajahat Ali plopped right there in 1980. And my parents were Pakistani Muslim immigrants who thought it'd be hilarious to name their only child Wajahat to blend. You know, as is the way, you know, people always joke, you know, like immigrant parents are like, did you guys burn the boat, or are you fresh off the boat? And I'm like, dude, my parents brought the boat inside the home. They did not give an F about integrating. They just did not care. Like literally, like they named me Wajahat. They didn't teach me English until I went to a child's hideaway preschool in Fremont. You know, husky pants, Mervin's, flea market, ate with my hands, green stuff in the kebabs. They didn't care at all. So I grew up in this idyllic suburban America as this brown Muslim kid who, at least in his home, was like nurtured with very brown Muslim culture and religious traditions and 3 generations of an American family. But then you realize your place in the American hierarchy when you go to school and you say, oh, not everyone is brown skinned, not everyone has turmeric stains on their fingernails, not everyone has 3-syllable names, no one else speaks Urdu. And you kind of realize, even though I'm living this American dream, I'm still a sidekick and an other, and I always have to explain myself.
I was born in Seoul and moved to Houston, Texas when I was 6 years old. We moved around quite a bit, but ended up in Glendale, which is where the book is set partially, when I was in 8th grade, 9th grade. And then went to college and came back here when I decided to try acting.
Right. And I think that growing up, I mean, your father.
When I told him I wanted to try acting, he said, have you thought about newscasting, my friend? Because he did see Connie Chung, and it did seem to be not against the rules to be Asian and read the news at the time.
Yes.
This was in another era called the 90s.
The 90s. Well, yes.
All too well.
But back to the present reality, 2020, 2022, these have been pandemic years, maybe kind of horrible, but, all of us at home, particularly writers, have had time for some interesting obsessions and ruminations and juxtapositions. And totally on point here, Southern California literary master T.C. Boyle came out with an incredibly timely short story collection called After the Plague.
Samantha, in 2001, almost 20 years ago, even though we're going to hear it right now, and I know it seems
but the opening is like exactly what happened.
Okay, I just want to add before we go into the next themed clip that T.C. Boyle was my teacher at USC. So if there's a little mutual snark going on, he trained us for that. I'm not being rude.
Fair enough, Snarkette. Anyway, Susan Orlean also is there. She's the kind of essayist that, she makes you think about things that maybe you haven't thought about before.
Oh, no, and they're going to haunt you.
And that may haunt you. I myself, there was an animal theme that emerged that I was particularly fond of. And Joyce Carol Oates, American grande dame of fiction, she always surprises.
She made me laugh. She made me laugh out loud.
So much. And John Lithgow. Anyway, listen, we'll see all of this soon. Roll clip, please.
After the plague. After the plague, it was some sort of Ebola mutation passed from hand to hand and nose to nose, like the common cold. Life was different, more relaxed and expansive, more natural. The rat race was over. The freeways were clear all the way to Sacramento, and the poor, dwindling, ravaged planet was suddenly big and mysterious again. It was a kind of miracle, really, what the environmentalists had been hoping for all along. Though, of course, even the most strident of them wouldn't have wished for his own personal extinction, but there it was. I don't mean to sound callous. My parents are long dead, and I'm unmarried and siblingless, but I lost friends, colleagues, and neighbors, the same as any other survivor. What few of us there are. We're guessing it's maybe 1 in 10,000, here in the States anyway. Oh, I'm sure there are whole tribes that escaped it somewhere in the Amazon or the interior valleys of Indonesia, meteorologists in isolated weather stations, fire lookouts, goat herds, and the like. But the president's gone, the vice president, the cabinet, Congress, the joint chiefs of staff, the chairman of the boards and CEOs of the Fortune 500 companies, along with all their stockholders, employees, and retainers. There's no TV, no electricity or running water. And there won't be any dining out anytime soon. So
except for the Wi-Fi, Animal Crossing, that's the one thing. Completely.
So the fun of such scenarios, and of course I had published a Friend of the Earth the year before this about global warming, is that we don't have the disease, we're fine. You know, this is the whole thing with horror stories as well. We can make fun of it, we can whistle in the dark, but it's, just reading that now, sure, I'm a wise guy and I'm snarking all the time, but that scenario is what we're living with now. And I'll tell you, it is pretty terrifying. I am in the high risk group, not only because of my age, by the way, I'm 93. I was 93 last December, but because I'm a pessimist. That's my underlying condition.
Day over 91.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Well, thank you. Thank you, my dear. I keep in shape, you know.
Oh, it's so funny. And I mentioned this in my story about chickens. Of all of the acquisitions or achievements in my life that I have described to friends, nothing has been more a source of envy than when I got chickens. And everybody had the same reaction, which was, oh, I really want chickens. And it was almost across the board, the reaction. And, you know, I've said things like, I found a wonderful husband and I had a baby, and nobody, it's somehow wanting chickens became a source of incredible desire and passion. And the reason that I wrote a lot about them and used as the first story in the book, a piece I did about backyard chickens, was because it was such a social moment. We reclaimed this very, very humble enterprise, which is raising chickens. I mean, there's never been any glamour associated with chickens versus having cattle. You know, cattle, it's a evidence of great wealth, and some, you know, it's sort of bragging rights. I have 2,000 head of cattle. No one has ever bragged about their chickens.
Well, I find Twitter a wonderful way to connect with all sorts of people whom I wouldn't know otherwise. And it started off in 2011. People were more on Twitter just to give recommendations of books and movies and television, you know, and there were a lot of comedians. So there was a lot of joking and visuals and videos and all that. And then with 2016, with the campaign, all that year, everything became politicized. So Twitter took a kind of combative and contentious atmosphere at that point. And I'm sort of sorry about that, because almost everything in the United States has become politicized now. It doesn't have to be. I mean, we can connect on things that we enjoy and on the country itself and nature and animals. We don't always have to have a political spin. So the Twitter that I'm interested in has really a wide range. Some of it's animals, animal rights, some of it's feminist issues, women's reproductive rights, and some of it is political. But some of it's art. I follow a lot of accounts that post works of art, and I do that myself often. And then, of course, there's a lot of cats.
excruciatingly painstaking. You know, getting meter right and getting rhymes perfect, they are all perfect. I will not allow a false rhyme. And hitting on interior rhymes within a single line. All of this is a very difficult process. I'm a big fan of impossible crossword puzzles. Just tenacity is my strong suit. I love difficult crosswords because what are crosswords for if not for wasting time? So I've approached these poems in exactly that way. They are very, very frustrating, but you're elated when you get to the last rhyme of the last line of the last sentence of a poem. You're just elated. It's completely wonderful. You think you're a genius, and then you have to go back and start all over again.
And the reader is elated also, but you also illustrate these things.
Yes,
and again,
yes.
I'm going to put up something to the camera. I'm so old school. Like, here's this thing of General Custer.
Yeah,
And this image is so fantastic. The illustration, it actually put me on mind of Hogarth. I have another book in my messy house. It's kind of like, if you look at
Sandra, you're naming all of my heroes.
But just look, if you look at, I'm behind, this is like the worst technology. Like, but if you see how the movement of these images go, it's quite ingenious. And you also have, when you draw, Rudy Giuliani, it's fair to say, is a favorite character of yours. Yes. And here's like your drawing of his.
Yeah.
Here's the reveal. That's Rudy Giuliani.
Yeah, that's right.
And then here's you recently on the Stephen Colbert report. So I want to ask you, given that you draw these caricatures and also do these amazing portrayals, is there any creative connection between the artist and the actor?
Oh, I think so. You know, I love extravagant expression. I love physicalizing these people, but it's the same thing I do when I act. You know, I go overboard for comic effect, but I try to express everything physically as well as orally and verbally when I act. It really is part of the same process. The poems and the illustrations definitely go together. Neither is nearly as good without the other. You know, the drawings have punchlines just the way each stanza has a punchline. You know, the basic idea. Custer is backwards on his horse.
Wow. You know, I just continue, like, looking at that, I just continue to be amazed at how close and in-depth we were able to get during the plague, right? With all these major figures. You know, the great Walter Mosley literally had a masterclass on masterclass, and we hosted him here. I mean, and then there was Dean Koontz, who had this astonishing, and you might call it eerie moment.
Yeah, but when his dog entered the room, the chat went crazy. You'll see when the dog's tail lifts on a particular word. Oh, it's so much fun to watch. And of course, then we had Scott Turow, this major blockbuster legal thriller author who shares such an intimate moment with us. I adore it. Let's roll it.
I do like, I find reading a pleasure. I think it's wonderful. I'm very conscious though about telling writers that reading and writing are very closely connected. I'm not sure of that. I mean, you know, I use, you know, the example, you know, of Homer. You know, if Homer really existed, here you have an illiterate blind man who creates the whole structure of Western literature, you know, from poetry to novels, to history, to real history. And you know, I mean, he spoke it. He remembered it. He spoke it. You know, some people are great storytellers. You hang out on a corner, you hang out, you know, anywhere, and people are just telling these extraordinary stories. And they're not trained. They don't read books. You know, they're just really good at storytelling. So, you know, I mean, I read because I love reading. That may actually have impact on me the same way that my unconscious does. but I don't tell anybody what they should do as far as reading is concerned.
I just wanted to note that you've been said that you read in the tub.
I do read in the bathtub. I like water too. Also, if I'm on any boat, I used to ride the Staten Island ferry every day, and there was so much fun reading. And when I'm on or in water, reading is like the best thing for me.
I've said that I give the writer or the character free will and just let them go. And they often go places I never would have contemplated. And it'll happen in an instant. It'll happen in a sentence where you're typing and the character thinks something that is coming to you at that moment, as if it's coming out of the character, and you halt, you go, no, that's a very bad idea. But I learned if the character is about to go there or think that or do that, let it happen, because something is going on in your subconscious that you're not connected to on a conscious level. And that is what this character is telling you. Here's where I need to go. And it's eerie. It really is like they're real people and they're running with you, chasing them as fast as you can. But it leads to better characters, I think, and more exciting stories.
Well, of course, beginning writers will ask, how do you get there? How do you get to that moment? Do you take a pill? Is there a protein drink?
One pill makes you happy and one pill makes you small. And no, I've never been asked how you get there. I'd have to think a minute, maybe a couple of years, but I think what it is I write. It looks like I do write at high volume, but it looks like I write fast when I really don't. I write a page 20, 30 times, maybe sometimes 10, because I have such self-doubt. I'm always polishing, because I think the prose has to move you through the book as if it's butter. And yet it needs to use the English language as well as it can be used, or at least as well as I can use it. Those two things are actually one and the same. If you're using it as well as you can use it, it will flow. When you're doing that, I get slowly, page by page through the book. I have a lot of time to let those characters brew, to come into their fullness. I think that's part of it. I know that a lot of writers have to outline, and I know a lot of writers have to write a quick draft and then go back just to get it done, and then go back and fix it. For me, and I encourage some writers to at least think about this, the quick draft often leaves it you doing the down and dirty version, and then it gets very hard to clean it up because it's a bigger chore, and you think, well, I've already got the story told. I shouldn't be spending all this. You start calming yourself into not doing what you ought to do. If you go through it more slowly, more thoughtfully, I think you end up with not only a better story, but a story that's better told. And you get more time for those characters to evolve. That's one thing. The other is, I don't know, it's sort of just trusting the process. I think if you have a character in the first few chapters that you like and you think people will like and have sympathy for, that's everything. But you've got to not be deluding yourself. You have to be real. There are times I get to a point, I think this character isn't working. I have to tear it up and back up and come up with a revised version. But the moment they work, that's when they take over. So it's a magical thing in some ways.
Being a novelist, especially when it's going well, brings you back to the joy of being a 6-year-old when you're playing with your imaginary friends. And yes, I mean, I watch, my grandchildren, they know those people aren't really there, but they're incredibly involved with them anyway. And, and that's the piece of herself or himself that every novelist has managed to keep alive. And when you can get back to that, it's a source of enormous joy. So yeah, I have a lot of bad days, but I also have really good ones. And I can't imagine not writing. You know, somebody will stop me eventually, but I can't imagine not doing it.
Love that.
I adore him. He's the best. He's the best. But we must move on immediately because we're moving so quickly. And segueing out of that, you know, Samantha, sometimes words are wielded in performance.
Yes.
And our next three writers demonstrate that so powerfully. First, we have Charlene Woodard. Aside from her brilliant solo theater shows like Pretty Fire, which she wrote, she's Tony-nominated Broadway royalty. She joined us for our first Juneteenth.
Yes, she did. And one of our 10 SCNG noteworthy writers this year was the inaugural poet and Southern California favorite, Amanda Gorman.
But before her, there was inaugural poet Richard Blanco, the first gay and Latino poet to be the inaugural poet. Obama chose one poem from Richard for Obama's party. I asked Richard to read another short poem that we'll hear in a moment for ours. It just always makes me cry. It's incredible. These three, yeah, they happen to be writers of color, but you know.
Yes. Yeah, no, but you know, speaking of which, another SCNG writer, it was a noteworthy writer of our program, was I'm losing my words. Pulitzer Prize winner. I'm verklempt when I'm introducing this guy.
That's what and I think the reason that you're verklempt is because he's very much not the shy and well-behaved model minority Asian American. And I laughed so hard when I saw the Southern California News Group PSA clip. That's probably why you're getting verklempt, because you're going, can we use this? Can we not? And we're gonna. So let's roll tape.
Let's roll it.
I mean, we were the three musketeers, Barbara and Linda and myself. And then, of course, one day, and not the first year because we're really young, but one day, you know, Barbara just woke up and looked at me and saw me differently and called me the N-word. In front of the entire class. And I could tell right away, even though that name was not anything I'd ever heard hurled at me, I knew it was horrible. And of course, the teacher snatched her up and took her off into the schoolroom. But when I went home to tell my mother, oh, I was devastated. I came in, I was screaming, you know, mommy, and telling her that she did this. And it was a betrayal, you know, and everything, because I thought she was my friend. But it's just something that she learned, and she said so. She said, my father said, and there it was. And my mother is an extraordinary woman to this day, because she got me ready. She knew that from 3rd grade to 12th, I would be outnumbered. I would be hanging out with the dominant culture. And so she would, every week I came home with something happened between a teacher or a student. And nobody really realized a lot of times people didn't know that they had hurt me. But mommy would just dust that stuff right off of you and give you a reason not to be hurt, strengthen you, and send you back out. She said to me that day, when I told her that Barbara called me that N-word, she put down, she was in the garden, in the backyard at the peach tree. She put down her tools, took off her gloves, threw her head back and laughed. And I begged her, mommy, please stop it. I'm very serious. You know, here I am in 4th grade begging her to be serious. And she looked around the yard. She said, okay, Charlene, what if I were to call you a rabbit pellet? Okay, that's crazy, Mom. Okay, what if I were to call you a stinkweed? Come on, hey, come on over here, rabbit pellet, and give mama some sugar. I mean, she was like that. And then I got it, and I called her like a froggy face, and we started throwing names. And next thing you know, we're running around this peach tree and calling names and laughing. She had me laughing about this moment that she knew I'd have to live through over and over and over again. And she told me in that grass underneath that peach tree that word is a word that people purposely made up to sling at us whenever they want to stop us, whenever they want us to not reach the goal we're trying to reach. They do that on purpose. But I want you, when they do that, she said, I want you to laugh to yourself. How silly are they? Because we all know that you're not a stinkweed, you're not a rabbit pellet, and you are not, will never be their inward.
America the Beautiful again. Oh, how I sang, oh, beautiful, like a psalm at church with my mother, her Cuban accent scaling up every vowel, oh, beautiful, yet in perfect pitch, delicate and tuned to the radiant beams of stained glass light. How she taught me to fix my eyes on the crucifix as we sang our thanks to our Savior for this country that saved us. Our voices hymns as passionate as the organ piping towards the very heavens. How I sang, for spacious skies, closer to those skies while perched on my father's sunbeat shoulders, towering above our first 4th of July parade. How the timbre through our bodies mingled, breathing, singing as one with the brass notes of the marching band playing the only song he ever learned in English. How I dared to sing it at assembly with my teenage voice cracking, for amber waves of grain. And those purple mountains majesties that I'd never seen, but could imagine them in each verse rising from my gut. With every exclamation of praise, I bellied out until my throat hurt, America, and again, America. How I began to read Nietzsche and doubt God, yet still wish for God to shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood. How I still want to sing, despite all the truth of our wars and our gunshots ringing louder than our school bells, our politicians smiling lies at the mic, the deadlock of our divided voices shouting over each other instead of singing together. How I want to sing again, beautiful or not, just to be in harmony from sea to shining sea with the only country I know enough to know how to sing for.
That's poetry, people.
Hey there, everybody. It's come to my attention that the Southern California News Group has picked The Committed as one of its noteworthy books of 2021. Needless to say, I'm thrilled. It's great to know that books are still being read and in greater numbers, and it's even better to know that the Southern California News Group foregrounds books. It's not always the case. Now, I could say to you out there that we should be reading books because books are good for us. They breed empathy and compassion. They breed a sense of affinity and feeling for others. But all that is true. What I really want you to know is that you should read because it's fun. Books are bad for you. That's the lesson you should be taking away from The Committed and from everything else that's coming across your way from the Southern California News Group. The Committed is a novel set in Paris, bad for you, and it features a lot of sex, drugs, violence, gang shootouts, and orgy, and lots of jokes, clean ones and dirty ones. So talking about reading, how many things out there that you can do every day that are both good and bad for you? I'm going to leave that to your imagination.
He said orgy on the air.
Okay, we're almost through. We're almost at the end of our show. So, but in our quick last stretch, who's ready for a Mary Lou Henner chair Zoom arm dance? Everyone is. Okay. So you'll see Mary Lou Henner, Taxi, Health Books. She's very fussy. As she does her bit, do the arms along with her, okay?
But wait, so let's not forget, you had a very emotional moment coming up with Winkler from Happy Days.
About
Yes, for you guys who might not know this 70s show, which weirdly my 13-year-old son has seen. Anyway, he explains the hidden vulnerability of the Fonz.
Right, even though after he does that, I keep trying to, you know what I mean? We talked about it, to make him do fun things.
Yeah, he's a New York Times best-selling author now, girl, and you get him.
Yeah, but I got him to do a teeny Fonz thing at the end. And then Marlo Thomas, of course, is amazing.
Always on fire. She sheds light on her 40-plus marriage to that boy who is Phil Donahue.
So listen at the end for Marlo's famous throaty chuckle. But first, with Marilu Henner, 1 minute, let's do the arms with her, okay? Let's roll.
In the last 5 months, I've done 4 movies in Vancouver. I was in the Sun Place Hotel for 2 weeks where I was not allowed to see another human face. You can't even walk out in your hallway. So I made a path of 70 steps in my room because I thought I'm gonna go crazy if I don't. And I made sure I did 11,000 to 13,000 steps a day. And I was just, it became this personal mission, you know, this holy grail. And I think, you know, you have to constantly say to yourself, motion is the lotion. Motion is the lotion, because it lubricates everything. It gets everything moving. And as a result, you know, you have to constantly make little carrot and sticks for yourself. You know what I'm saying? So it was really important for me to do that. And if I were like going to bed and I'm like, damn, I'm only at 8,000, I'd get up. And it's actually, walking is a very easy thing to do, because every time you're on the phone, you walk. You have your phone on your body, in your pocket, whatever, your you know, Apple Watch, whatever, and you just keep moving. You keep moving. So every time you watch TV, you move. Every time you talk on the phone, you move. Every time you're like working on something, you get up and you move. And it's very easy to get to that many steps.
As cool as he was, all he wanted was Mrs. C to be his mom.
Yes.
All he wanted was to have Richie as his brother.
Oh. I'm crying now. That's so true. He went at the normality, but I have to say, and we're going to get off this one, but I'm so obsessed with it. Like when he goes like this, and then 6 girls come forth, he goes, one at a time. Wait, your turn. So he's playing the room, right?
But can I just say, this is just a PSA. If you're watching, don't ever snap your fingers at a woman. I promise you, they will break them off. That snapping only works on TV. I snapped at my wife, and I slept in the garden for quite a while.
Although then you could, like Fawns, go to the owls and birds, you know, knock it out. Yeah. Okay, so.
Well, I was staying in an apartment downtown. The kids and Phil were in Winnetka, and I had to be up at like 4 in the morning. So the company, his TV company, had an apartment downtown for him till when it snowed. So I stayed in the apartment for a couple of nights because I had to get up so early, and Winnetka's a long drive. Anyway, so it's about, I don't know, 4 o'clock in the morning. I have to be up in like a half hour, and there's a big banging on my door. And I think, oh my God, who could be coming to my room at 4 o'clock in the morning? So I opened the door, and there's Phil. And he said, oh, honey, I just missed you. And I thought, oh, you're such full of BS. I looked at him, I said, come in, do your search through the apartment. I mean, he had it in his head that Chris Christopherson was there. I mean, it's so ridiculous, you know, and then he, you know, then we talked about it, he laughed about it and everything, because I was furious because now I wasn't getting another hour's sleep. But he talks about the fact that when people have jealousy, it's really in them. It's not anything you did.
Right.
And they have to get rid of that. And Phil said, you know, I mean, we've been married 40 years, but he said about after 20 years of marriage, he finally realized that he trusted me and he could get rid of that. He said, because it was really a burden. It really hurt to carry it around. The other thing that I thought was wonderful that somebody said, Judith Vior said, no matter how hard you try, he is never going to be you, and you are never going to be him. So really what you have to do to make a marriage successful is accommodate those differences. And Phil and I are very different. I'm a very impulsive person. If something is happening and we need a solution, I'm going to go for the phone right now and call somebody and get whatever we need. Phil, on the other hand, he wants to sit back, he wants to think it over, and maybe sometime tomorrow, you know, he'll come to a decision. And so that's been a battle for us, you know, where I say, come on, let's do this. And he'll say, no, just wait a minute. But when we worked on the book, there were so many incidents in a row of all these people that we interviewed that we started to learn that, you know, sometimes it's better to wait and sometimes it is better to move forward. So we started to be able to talk about that because we had so many experiences. Invite me again. I'd love to be on with you. It was a lot of fun.
Okay, and we're recording that, so we will have you back.
Thank you.
Love her.
There's the laugh. And you know what? She's 84 and she's so fiery. I mean, I just turned 60 this year, so I've been thinking about aging a lot. But as we listen to these writers talk about aging, which we'll all do if we're lucky, it's been so inspiring. And you know, and that's what we're going to see next.
And talk about the golden years. Frances May, she's like exudes goldenness. You'll see.
We're going to see her followed by Dave Barry in front of his aging of weirdly serene dog Lucy, our final Zoom pet bombing. Even though Dave Barry, even though he's 70 now, astoundingly, Samantha, he never manages to mature.
Amazing. Well, let's check it out. Let's roll.
A lot of people come to my adopted town of Cortona, and I can tell they're on a quest. They're not just traveling for fun to go to the winery and out to lunch. They're there for a reason, and I so recognize that when I see them in the piazza. And I think that's one reason I wrote Women in Sunlight, because I wanted to give life to these women who were there for some reason having to do with making changes in their lives. And I think that's the secret behind a lot of travel, is that you want to make a change. You might not know what it is, but you feel something out there pulling you toward it. And that's something very important to pay attention to, is what is pulling you. What is pulling you? I feel that often, and it usually gets me in a lot of trouble, gets me into new directions. But the other reason for writing Women in Sunlight was a kind of tribute to friendship, because that's been one of the greatest joys of my life, has been my women friends. And I was having, this sense of getting older and seeing what was happening to a lot of women, seeing women prematurely shut down, not only women really, but a lot of people. They get this message when they get older that it's over, your shelf life's up, give it up, go to an assisted retirement active center or something like that. And I saw friends of mine beginning to consider things like that when, I'm ready to go off to Egypt, and I think, why not? So I wanted to give these older women a big choice and to let them have it. I gave my women characters everything they wanted, just about, because I think it's still possible at any age to make life-affirming, huge changes at the last minute, as Grace Paley said, enormous changes at the last minute.
When I got my first colonoscopy, which was now over 10 years ago, I wrote a column about it. And as you say, it became extremely viral, because everybody at some point has to get a colonoscopy. And I tell people, definitely, I was afraid to do it. A lot of people afraid. Definitely do the colonoscopy. It's not, they give you wonderful drugs. I mean, so good that when it's over, you go, hey, let's do that again. The one thing is they the preparation for the colonoscopy, I just need to say, they have to clean you out. I don't want to get too explicit here, but they give you a nuclear laxative that is so powerful that your bowels travel into the future and you expel food you have not even eaten yet. So that's the one kind of negative part, but everything else is just a piece of cake, if I may use that expression. It's not really appropriate, but that's, yeah.
Well, and I have to say, I have to quote something here. So you were talking about the nuclear laxative. You go, have you ever seen a space shuttle launch? That is pretty much the movie prep experience with you as the shuttle.
Yeah, they should put a seatbelt on the commode to hold you down. I mean, are we getting this is pretty not very tasteful.
It's humor, it's funny stuff. We've veered off the rails.
It's medically important to know this.
It is medically, and I think there was a very special moment in your procedure where there was some romantic music.
Oh, yeah. The guy who gave me the colonoscopy, his name is Andrew Sable. He's still my gastroenterologist. He's a great guy. He's a good friend. But they were playing music, and as they were like putting you under, and you're like in a vulnerable spot. You're like, you're wearing that one of those surgical things that really makes you feel more naked than if you're actually naked. You know what I mean? And there are people in the room, they're not all of your gender, whatever your chosen gender may be. And I'm like kind of fighting because the guy's putting the needle in and he's saying, you're gonna fall asleep now. And I'm thinking, I don't know if I'm gonna fall asleep in this situation. And the last thing I heard was Dancing Queen by ABBA, just blaring. And so I ended up writing about that in the column. And when I went in for my next colonoscopy 5 years later or whatever it was, sure enough, Andrew waited till just the moment I was just going under and it blasted again. So that's my official colonoscopy song. I recommend it to everybody.
Which brings us to our show's happy ending. I'm so sorry. I mean, speaking of Frances Mays' tribute to friendship, especially women friends, we are women friends, but on Bookish, we've all grown together in these last 2 years as a family.
Yes.
Literally, our quarantine kids have actually joined us on this show, and that brings us to our final clip.
It does. And in the special episode, Kidding Around with Diary of a Wimpy Kid author, Jeff Kinney, your daughter, Maddie, is seen for a second co-hosting.
Well,
Yes.
I, the anxious mother, look on, and then a certain young reader named Ben Kemp, your son, leans into his mom's camera to play Stump the Celebrity Author, our final clip.
Yes, indeed. There are future talk show hosts of tomorrow, Sandra.
Yes,
so.
well, actually, our final clip, except for one. This will be our final clip. You'll say a goodbye, and then we're going to roll out with really a special bonus
footage. Yes, indeed.
Roll it.
Bring on the kids.
So I think we might have another child guest of Ben Camp, age 11.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm
Hey, Ben, how are you?
good. How are you? Before I say my question, I just want to say I'm a really big fan of you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm working hard. I hope the next book works for you.
Yeah. So what inspired you to make it? Has there been like anything like in your childhood or anything that just inspired you to make it?
Yeah, everything. And they say, that if you're a writer or a musician, an actor, you'll use everything from your life. And it's true. I think that what's really wild is that you're the owner of your own life story, right? So you sort of have the copyright to your own life. And the things that happen to you uniquely. And so just about everything in the books has happened to me at some point in my life. In this book that I'm writing right now is a camping story, but for example, they go whitewater rafting or they actually go tubing. And this happened to me in real life where my bathing suit was almost taken off and flowed downstream on me. And so now I'm making that happen to Greg. It's just like something that happened to me as a grown-up. But a lot of the stories of Diary of a Wimpy Kid come from my real life stories. And if you can you tell me anything funny that you remember from the Diary of a Wimpy Kid books? Because I can tell you where it came from.
Let me think. When Greg was at the public pool and all the little kids started to pee everywhere.
Was that in the movie or in the?
I don't remember. I get confused with the movies and the books.
Yeah, me too. Sometimes I do too. Yeah, that's let's see. I am sure that's happened. I'm sure it's happened to you where you swam in the little kids pool and you're like, boy, this water is really warm. That's really odd, isn't it? And then, it takes you a little while to realize what's actually going on in there. And that's why you move to the bigger kids pool, So yeah, definitely that kind of thing happened to me as a kid.
Oh man, I'm getting all choked up. Well, listen, that is our show. Listen, thank you, Sandra, for everything. And thank you, everybody, for joining us for 2 years of Bookish. And join us next month and beyond for all of the new roster of talent we've got coming up. And remember, you do not have to wait that long for great content about authors. You can sign up for our Book Pages newsletter and subscribe to get our weekly coverage of books and everything else. And if you've got questions, email us at SCNG events at
SCNG. And to keep you in shape for your typing, here we go. Our bonus encore. Are you ready for our final 3-minute share dance as we go out, everyone, as you go off to dinner? Yes, from Daniel Handler, Lemony Snicket on his accordion. We're going to stay on screen and dance along. I hope that you will too. All right? To forestall any new series of unfortunate events, let's just follow right now Lemony Snicket's precise, if slightly ominous instructions. Hit it and goodbye. See you.
So here it is. This is my bright red accordion. And I'm going to sing a song about Count Olaf, who's the villain in a series of unfortunate events. And the song requires a little participation from Ms. Lowe, from everyone, but I could only see Ms. Lowe. Okay. So I'm going to tell Ms. Lowe what to do. All of you are going to follow along. And I, of course, can't see you here, but I'm told that the officials who are running this event have a camera installed in each of your homes, and we're all watching you, and we're going to make sure that you're all participating the way I'm telling you to. This is the 21st century. This is how we do things, with surveillance. So this is about Count Olaf. The Count has an eye on his ankle and lives in a horrible place. He wants all your money, he's never at all funny. He wants to remove your face. And you might be thinking what a romp this is, but wait till you meet his accomplices. When you see Count Olaf, you're suddenly full of disgust and despair and dismay. In the whole of the soul of Count Olaf, there's no love. When you see Count Olaf count to 0, then scream and run away. Scream, scream, scream and run away. Run, 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 or die, 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 die. Two women with powdered white faces and one long-nosed bald man with warts. Things worsen and worsen. There's a hook-handed person and others with nastier parts. This evil and unpleasant group completes Count Olaf's acting troupe. The goal of Count Olaf is getting control of the fortunes of urchins and orphans. Hooray, I mean horrors. Count Olaf is no laughing matter. When you see Count Olaf count to 0, then scream and run away. Scream, scream, scream and run away. Run, 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 or die, 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 die. And now this last part of the song requires everyone's least favorite thing, audience participation. Follow along with Ms. Lowe on the screen. When I sing the part that says run, you may pretend that you're running. Rehearsal? Let me see you run. Very nice. And when I sing the part that says die, you may pretend to die. Rehearsal? Oh, wonderful. And rise from the dead and run. Run, 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 run. Or die, 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 die. Run, 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 run. Or die, 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 die. Run, run, die, die, run, run, die, die, run, die, run, die, run, die, run, die, die.
Woo! Bye, everybody, if you're still there. That was something. See you next time.